Hello, everybody. I am here today to talk to Miss Hooks and Miss Winter about what pods are. I know there are a lot of questions out there, so we're just going to dive into some quick Q&A. So, what are pods, and what does that mean?
So I guess the traditional definition of like a learning pod are really for like micro schools. And a lot of this happened during COVID where they would bring several families of mixed age students together to learn at the same time. And so our definition here at West Grand is really for classroom podding to bring together mixed age students just to share in an educational experience. Obviously, that's led by state standards.
Yep. So, in thinking about this, one of the questions that have come up, because just in case you're not aware, this pod structure is something that we are moving toward next year for a few of our grade levels in the elementary school. So, what would a day in the life of a student look like who is in a pod? Like, what does that mean for a student?
So the students that will likely be in a pod next year would be second and third grade students and fourth and fifth grade students. And so if you are, say, a second grader, you would come to school and you would be in a homeroom classroom. So everybody would have a homeroom classroom that they would begin the day in, and they would do their morning meeting and ground themselves in the day, just get ready. And then from there, they would stay in a designated group and they would rotate to 3 classrooms throughout the day for different content areas. So they would go to a classroom and get their ELA, reading instruction. They would go to a classroom and get their math instruction. They would go to another classroom and get their science and social studies and writing instruction. And so they would rotate in their group. But again, they would start their day in their homeroom and they would end their day in their homeroom.
And they'd also go to specials with their homeroom students. So they'd still have a lot of that homeroom consistency. And in some of the grade levels, we do this a little bit where one of the teachers, because we have 2 teachers in each grade level right now, one of the teachers will do kind of like ELA and social studies, and maybe the other will do math or science. And so the students will go across the hall to the other room for an hour or two. So some of these students are already experiencing a little bit of this team teaching, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds a little bit like what would be considered kind of like a traditional middle school, kind of where they rotate.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, it'd be similar.
So one of the questions, again, when we're talking about mixed grade levels is then how do teachers decide what to teach to which students?
So in the state of Colorado, we use the Colorado standards that every grade level has a set standards for every content area that teachers are referring to throughout the year to make sure that their students are understanding the standard and then moving on before the end of the school year, they're ready for the next grade level. So what we're going to do is we are going to take, say it's second and third grade, we're going to take second grade standards and third grade standards and align them into a scope and sequence that those teachers will use throughout the year. Then we have curriculum that they will use as a resource to meet those standards. But there will be progress monitoring, so a lot of assessing informal assessing throughout the school year to determine where the students are they meeting these standards, what else do we need to do, are they exceeding them, just to help us know, are they on track, and what else do we need to do to support them.
And what's super cool about these mixed grade level pods and the scope and sequencing is really the content will live with one teacher. And so that's what we're most excited about for our staff, is that they will become content specialists. So we will have a teacher that teaches math, and that teacher will really understand the math standards inside and out and the math curriculum inside and out. And so they become well-versed and very professional in those specific content areas, instead of what's happening right now where they're having to learn 5 different types of state standards and implement 3 different kinds of curriculum. Each teacher will just be responsible for one set of content standards, and one type of curriculum. And so hopefully that will help us retain some of our teachers and help them to feel more confident in the subject matter they're teaching.
How will student groups be determined?
There's not one straight answer for this. This is definitely going to be a group conversation where teachers, admin, interventionists come together and determine these groups. And then that will be every quarter. These groups will with the assessing that we already spoke to, we will determine if there needs to be some switching around of these groups. If students are looking like they need this group, or they need to go to this one, we will be able to make those changes every quarter. But it's definitely going to be based on state assessments, observational data, anecdotal data, conversations. There's going to be a lot of factors that play into the grouping for the students.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, we just want to do what's best for kids. And so this is a similar process to what we do right now in choosing groups when they go on to the next grade level, making sure that they're with the right teacher or maybe in the right group of friends. And so those are all things that we do right now as a practice that will continue to make sure that these groups are something that really work best for each individual student. And of course, just like any school year, if something's not going well in a grouping with your child, you can always reach out and we'll assess that with you. You're part of our team as well.
Great. And my last question really is kind of like the biggest need for understanding for all of us, right? Is that question of why. And I know it has been brought up with the board decision to move to a 7 through 12 and a K-6 school. There's some questions about, well, was this pod a part of the board's decision? And the straight out answer is no, that this pod structure was what we were talking about as a team already and what our plan was to move forward no matter what, especially with the elementary. So I would just like you all to share kind of that reasoning, like why go with this pod structure and what might be that benefit?
I think really we just want the best people in front of as many students as possible. And so making sure that our students have access to more than one high quality educator, especially because we know that all of our educators have different strengths. And so playing on those strengths to make sure, one, that our educators appreciate the field in which they're working, but then two, that they can deliver the best quality education to more than just one group of students. Now they get to deliver that education to almost double the students that they would get to impact before. So that was one of the reasons, is just making sure that we have high quality educators in front of more students.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that we determined there was a lot of conversation in how we're going to pod and who we're going to pod. Mm-hmm. And so we decided that it would be best to leave kindergarten and first grade to have 2 teachers, and it will be a pretty traditional structure. But then looking at the standards, we looked at second grade and third grade and fourth and fifth grade, and there is a lot of alignment. So it's not a huge jump in what those students are learning. There is extensions within them, but they align pretty well. So it made sense for us to take our highly qualified teachers and just give them 3 teachers per 2 grade levels while still having fairly small class sizes to deliver really effective instruction. And then 6th grade will also have 2 at this time. The tentative plan is to have 2 teachers to just like we were doing with the kinder and first grade.
Yeah, and again, part of it too is just the staffing shortage across the nation in the field of education. And we know that we're always looking to see what can we do not only to attract high quality staff, but to retain our staff and to help everybody feel supported while also making decisions on what's best for students. So we appreciate Ms. Hooks, Ms. Winter for their time, and we hope that you continue to reach out to any of us, ask us questions, come in and talk, because that's what we're here for, and we're all a part of this team together.